Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about trees. You may remember from last episode that we were collecting all the acorns and we even grabbed a couple of pip eggs and we're sending them back to our primary colony. And the reason we were doing that is because we figured, you know what, pips and trees would be pretty good over here. And I just realized the pips have gone ahead and planted the trees. That's not what we wanted. Fun fact about the pips though. Apparently in the game code, they're called squirrels. This whole time, everybody's just been assuming that they were cats, but the designers actually made them after squirrels. So in the past little while, when I've been thinking about what direction we're going to head in this colony, we knew we were going to go trees some sort into ethanol production, using a petroleum generator to generate power, etc., etc. But we weren't sure if we were going to make them wild trees or domestic trees. You may also remember from last episode that we were having a bit of an oxygen problem here on the second colony. And I was utterly shocked that Miko Nala had used all the oxygen that was here until it was pointed out in the comments I had left a giant gap here. When the colony is generated and it wants to put a satellite in, it kind of breaks through all of this crust, sort of to indicate that that's how the satellite crashed. Well, when we dug into here, we completely forgot that this was open to the vacuum of space. Ergo, that's what happened to all of our oxygen. So we're doing a lot better on the oxygen front. But moving on to the discussion of domesticated or wild trees. Remember, our colony is not very large. And if we wanted to run, say, one petroleum generator, it would take a little over 28 trees. That's right. That's a lot of space when we're talking about the wild planted trees. And this has to do with how much lumber it produces domesticated versus wild. When they're wild, it takes 18 cycles for the branches to grow. But if we domesticate the arbor tree, it only takes a little over 7 trees to produce the same amount of lumber. Now, nothing's saying that you have to actually use 8 trees, or what turns out to be almost 29 trees, but that's the math that's required to run 4 ethanol distilleries, and it takes 4 ethanol distilleries to keep a petroleum generator running flat out. Now, we're going to go into some of the math, but we're not going to go sort of step by step, but rather hit the wave tops. So you're just going to have to take my word for some of it. To domesticate 8 trees, it requires 560 kilos of polluted water, as seen in this little tiny box. It also requires 70 kilos worth of dirt. And we get those figures because each tree costs 10 kilos per cycle of dirt and then 70 kilos per cycle of polluted water. To raise all those trees wild, though, it takes nothing. No dirt, no water. Let's not concentrate on the dirt right now. Let's just look at the water. So if we know we want to grow 8 trees at 560 kilos per cycle requirement, well, that only turns out to be about 0.93 kilos per second. And most polluted water geysers will give you more than that. So that's the water sort of taken care of. Well, let's follow the train of events here and see what we can do about the dirt. All of these trees produce lumber. We then have some automation here that picks up the lumber and brings it down to ethanol distilleries. Well, the ethanol distilleries produce dirt. And remember, with that many trees, I told you we can run 4 ethanol distilleries flat out. But if we look at it, each ethanol distillery can provide 333.33 grams per second of polluted dirt. We times that by 4 ethanol distilleries, that's 1.333 kilos per second of dirt, or 800 kilos per cycle. Well, remember, it only takes us 80 kilos worth of dirt per cycle to run 8 plants. I think I said 70 before, but we're actually running 8 plants, so it's 10 kilos per tree. So if we convert all of this polluted dirt over into regular dirt, we'll have plenty to use in the domesticated trees. And what you're looking at here is the 14 compost it takes to turn all that polluted dirt into regular dirt. Alternatively, we could even ranch pips using some of the excess tree growth that we have and use the dirt that they provide. So really the difference of using either all of these wild trees versus only 8 domesticated trees is about a half a geyser's worth of water, and that's about it, because the process itself is going to produce enough dirt to sustain it. Additionally, we're going to be producing a bunch of polluted water. Now, don't get too excited about that polluted water, because it's coming out at 99C. And you can imagine the heyday that the 99C water would cause on our arbor trees that like to stay between 15 and 40 degrees. Not to mention the fact that the process doesn't produce as much polluted water as it takes to actually grow the trees. It's close at about a 90% efficiency, but you're still going to run short of polluted water. Additionally, the carbon dioxide produced by the 4 ethanol distilleries and the petroleum generator is enough to feed 35 slicksters. And then all those slicksters are going to produce crude oil. And if you're running molten slicksters, they'll produce petroleum, which you can throw back into another petroleum generator, producing you more water and more carbon dioxide. It's seriously a sick cycle. Now, in our colony, we don't actually have access to slicksters yet, but we could use all that carbon dioxide for our space program. So whether we're domesticated planting these or wild planting these, we've seen the huge advantages we're going to get by turning all that lumber into ethanol and then feeding it to a petroleum generator. But it's not all great news. For instance, this polluted water is going to cause some issues that we're going to have to contend with because it's being pumped out at 100C. We'll have to find a way to cool it. Additionally, these composts are very hot. Just in the little while that I've been running these composts on our test bench, you can see it's about 35C here versus 19C over here. It's going to require some duplicate labor. We have auto sweepers loading up the compost, but it takes a dupe to actually go and flip it around. On the other hand, all of this process doesn't require any dupe labor at all. As long as you keep it inside of a nice insulated box and you have some automation, it'll handle the delivery of the lumber and the shipping of the polluted dirt. And it's a good thing too, because it gets awfully hot inside this box. A special note on the test bench, it would actually require more than one gas pump to keep up with all the carbon dioxide being produced, but for our quick purposes, one worked out just fine. So we're obviously going to be growing some trees. So now the question still remains, domesticated or wild? And to make that decision, we'll come back here to our home colony. As you can see, we just don't have the space. We're only 100 cycles in and we're using a significant amount already. Now, once we fully industrialize all this and add a rocketry program, start ranching critters or expanding farms, we're going to run out of space really quickly. Miko Nala analyzed this cool slush geyser for us, and you can see that it produces 1.42 kilos per second of polluted water. That turns out to be 852 kilos per cycle. And remember, each tree only requires 70 kilos per cycle. So this one vent could actually give us 13 trees. Although I think we'll be fine with just the 8. So the first thing that we need to think about is where we're going to put these 8 trees. And the only sort of eligible area, unless we start digging this out, is going to be over here. Now I don't want to get too far over because I still want to do our industrial sauna with all 3 of these volcanoes. So I think we're actually going to try to put them right into here. Additionally, because we're going to need to be pumping all this polluted water over, which will require power, we're going to go ahead and leave Miko Nala here and start setting up this colony for long-term sustainability. Now, I don't know if this is going to be Miko's permanent home. They're a pretty valuable dupe, but they're just the dupe for the job to get all this done. And because I don't want Miko to be alone, let's go ahead and defrost their friend. Ooh, let's inspect first to get our beautiful data bank. And who do we get? Oh, it's a Pay! Hello, Pay. Let's do a little research and find out more about Pay. First thing to note is when you do thaw out a friend, they get a 10 cycle bonus with minus 20% stress and plus 6 to morale, because they feel motivated about finding a long lost friend. Pay here starts with that ancient knowledge, so we'll actually get 3 skill points. They have allergies, a green thumb, they're an interior decorator, and they're a banshee balloon artist. Well, looks like we found ourselves an art dupe. We're going to go with 2 points into the art line and then 1 into improved carry. That way they can help out a little bit. Of note, the duplicant who thawed out the friend also gets that huge bonus, which it's good because Miko is sort of stressing out. We are going to keep Pei and Miko not on the same exact schedules for the simple purposes of being that there's only 1 bathroom for now. Now, Pei and Miko have an absolute smorgasbord of food. Right now, they have 36,000 calories worth of excellent fruit. Additionally, there's a bunch of other excellent fruit around here. Even more over here. Some more over here. Needless to say, they're good on food for a little while. I think once the time comes, we'll put them on meal lice. We have over 200 tons of dirt here until we get some other crops that we can run with the excess polluted water being produced by the cool slush geyser. Or we could start ranching some pips. We'll see. So that's food sorted. Now oxygen's another problem. As you can see, we've got a large buildup of hydrogen here because we're just running an open plan electrolyzer. Let's go ahead and build something a little bit better, shall we? I think this is going to be a good spot here. We can use some of the heat that's produced to fend off some of this chill, and that way we can continuously grow our crops as needed. This is what we're going to try for our basic electrolyzer setup. This one electrolyzer will produce enough oxygen for a little over 8 duplicants. Considering we're probably only going to have 2 on here permanently, this is going to be plenty. Now I'm trying this design for the very first time, so there may be some kinks in it. But one thing I'm going to do is leave a manual airlock here, and I made it out of aluminum so it'd have a little bit better thermal conductivity. And the reason why is because I'm going to make a sort of hot box here. That way when we have all this cold water, we have somewhere to send it through to warm it up a little bit before we send it over to our next planetoid. But in order to build the hot box, we're going to need some refined metal because we're going to put some nice radiant liquid pipes through here. We've also put in a rust deoxidizer to use up some of this rust. That was, of course, before I realized this planetoid doesn't come with any salt. Your rust deoxidizer is sort of useless. I didn't want chlorine all over my base anyways. This would have been a major mistake. I'm sure I would have seen it eventually. The long and short of it is, just like in a large spawn sort of system, all of our hydrogen's going to sort of float up and be absorbed by this gas pump. The oxygen's going to sink to the bottom and get eaten up by these gas pumps. We'll then take all that hydrogen, put it off into a hydrogen generator to provide power for the grid. This is not going to be a spawn setup. In other words, it's not going to be self-powered, but we're going to have very minimal power requirements on this colony anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Over on our main colony, which I'm still trying to figure out the appropriate pronunciation for, we've made a couple of updates. First and foremost, we've wrangled all of the plug slugs and just put them in a room. That way we don't have to worry about them eating any of our metal ore. We've also started updating our sublimation stations. We have 2 of them in the colony, and this is the same setup for both of them. This just helps get rid of some of the polluted oxygen coming out, but it does need to be said that the sublimation station has a maximum throughput of 660 grams per second. The deodorizers can only clean 100 grams per second. So this is not going to get everything all at once. In the long run, it will, because there's plenty of times that the sublimation station is just sitting idle and the deodorizers will keep working. But now we have to play the game where we're worried about our sand. So far, we're fine, and inside of our rock crusher, we'll just occasionally crush some sedimentary rock until we make it to space and can start sending round trips to gather more sand. We also have another frozen friend over here, but I don't think we're gonna thaw them out quite yet. Right now, we don't exactly need the labor, so I don't want to push it. On another note, we'll be updating the bathrooms here soon, which means we're going to need some sort of water filtration, which is probably going to mean a water sieve for now. But I think the long-term plan is to be able to boil the polluted water, creating regular water, recovering the dirt, and also sanitizing it. Then we'll just have to worry about cooling it down. But once again, for that, we're going to need plastic. We're also starting to clear out a little bit more area for our trees. Now, most of this is pretty good in temperature. Up here is going to be a little colder, but we're going to need some more room for petroleum generators and ethanol distilleries and stuff too eventually, so we might as well do it while we have our digging going. And without overthinking it too much, we're just going to put them down here on the bottom. We're going to leave plenty of room up here because eventually we're going to put in a bunch of automation, and having this kind of space ensures that we'll have room for all the auto sweepers, the conveyor loaders, and the conveyor receptacles. Now, to start off with, we're not going to be doing too much automation in the beginning. It's going to be all dupe labor. But as we add the other components, like the petroleum generator and the ethanol distilleries, we'll slowly start to expand. Another issue is, for instance, the conveyor receptacle is locked behind applied sciences, and we're still very early in our run, so I don't plan on doing any of this applied sciences quite yet. And since we have so much polluted water on this planetoid to start with, we don't have to worry about shipping it over from Frostine quite yet. Now I want to leave this polluted water just where it's sitting where it is because all the puffs are enjoying breathing in the polluted oxygen that's being off-gassed by the polluted water and then creating us more slime. So instead, I think I'll start with down here. The temperature of all this water is only 26 degrees, so it will not stifle the trees. And that way we can get a head start on some of the lumber production before the water and everything is even ready on Frostine. One thing I've noticed about this playthrough is I'm sort of jumping into middle game. In other words, I'm not doing everything that we're supposed to be doing in the early game, like setting up bathrooms, making the conditions a little bit better. Instead, we're going directly to what's going to be an intermediary power solution, sort of setting us up for success heading into the mid-game. I do suppose that during some of the downtime, though, I could probably get bathroom set up. Eilert does not look too pleased at all. Back over on the colony, I feel much more comfortable pronouncing. We're starting to tie in our pipes. Now, to start with, we're just going to grab what clean water we had. Eventually, we're going to be grabbing the polluted water from here, cleaning it, and then sending it through here. But we're also going to want to take all that polluted water, use it to chill down the oxygen in here, and to warm up the polluted water before we send it over to our home colony. For that, we've created a bunch of refined aluminum, and we're going to throw some radiant liquid pipes in here, and they're just going to sort of weave in and out just like this before being sent back over to the home colony. And for that, we're going to go all the way over like this, up through here, and then tie into this nice little reservoir bank where we're going to be able to stockpile a lot of it. It'll also help keep the temperature fluctuations down, because when a blob of water joins a much larger amount of water, those temperatures sort of average out. Now, right now, there's a bunch of insulated pipes, and there's radiant pipes and regular pipes. We may have to add insulated pipes here and there, remove some of the radiant liquid pipes if we find perhaps that we're heating the water up too much or not enough. But that's sort of going to be give and take test once this whole system is up and operational. I think we're about ready to fire this up. We have all of the oxygen coming out through here and being dropped off to 3 gas vents, just sort of top, middle, and lower part of the what eventually is going to be their small little colony. Then all we're going to have to do is take all of the hydrogen and bring it out as well. We're going to go through where the insulated tiles are going to be, hop over there, and then end up in a hydrogen generator, say, here. In fact, we'll make it out of gold as well. Now, this area will get warm, but what I think we're going to do is just box the whole thing in, because the hydrogen generator doesn't actually need any maintenance. So if we put a bunch of insulated tiles around it, we'll never even have to worry about it. Hydrogen in, power out. Until the hydrogen is running pure, though, we will dump it off into a reservoir. That way we don't have to worry about repairing the hydrogen generator that we spent so much of our gold amalgam on. In fact, while we're here, why don't we put a battery in there as well? A smart battery right here. We don't have to worry about its heat either. All right, now I really think that we're ready to get this thing going. The last bit is the power. Now, we went ahead and put in some conductive wire, even though we're not sort of using that yet, but it'll sort of future-proof us. For now, though, we'll tie it in our standard crappy 2-strand wire, and we should finally have oxygen, which I'm sure Pei and Miko Nala are going to be very appreciative. That's right, I'm supposed to rename Pei. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to dupe number 7, our frozen friend, J-Ray. And yes, that is designer citrus spandex, in case you were wondering. All right, we have our small oxygen system all stabilized. It's working perfect. We have the Atmos sensor set on 250 for the top one and 450 for the bottom. We have a couple of junk gases in here. It's not going to be a big deal. We could even open this airlock, let them siphon out through the oxygen system. Right now, it's only operating on this clean water here, but we have this pump getting ready to go in. We'll send it through a water sieve and then send it all the way through this system here. The difference is we're only going to send so much through the water sieve. The rest is going to come through our cooling device and then head back out through here. And we're going to set the priority to make sure that we always leave enough water to provide oxygen. Of course, with only 2 duplicants here, it's not going to be too difficult. We also have all of our hydrogen flowing. We put some radiant pipes in here just to keep this somewhat cool, even though they are both made out of gold amalgam. Oops. The smart battery apparently is not made out of gold. Let me go ahead and fix that now. And unfortunately waste all that precious energy. Alright, now both of them are made out of gold and gold amalgam. So they'll have the increased overheat temperature, and then we're going to seal it in. And we're done here. Miko and J Ray are about finished with all the piping, so let me walk you through this beautiful monstrosity. All of our water is going to be coming from this cool slush geyser. Reminder, it comes out at minus 10°C, so we start by putting in some insulated liquid pipes and sending it down to a water sieve. Now eventually this water sieve is going to get backed up because the oxygen system only needs so much water. When it does back up, the rest of the polluted water is going to overflow past the water sieve, slide all the way through here, keeping this and the oxygen cool and warming up that polluted water just a little bit. Reminder, this is where we might have to play with some insulated piping to control that temperature. We might be able to put some automation in the future, but for now we're going to do it the old manual mechanical way. After it exits here, the polluted water is going to take the long trip all the way up to a buffer system and then eventually being sent to our home planetoid, where the water then comes in from the supply teleporter output, travels the long distance all the way to yet another buffer station, and eventually gets fed to our trees. Now the great thing is right now we're using insulated tile, but if we ever need some temperature control, we could also run these pipes anywhere we want to drop the temperature down a little bit. For now, we're going to start off by using all of this water in sort of a 50-50 split, just to make sure that we're able to drain the polluted water from around this planetoid. Now, I'm sure I'm going to end up having to put a liquid tepidizer here or there and play a lot of temperature control games, but that's sort of the fun of it, and I'll be taking care of that in the background, and we'll make sure to give you an update during the next video. Next week, I think we're going to start getting into the ethanol distillation and the petroleum generator, which that's going to take steel, which is going to take some metal refining, so we have a lot of work to do. Not to mention, we need to get to space sooner rather than later, for the main reason, just like Ilart's new bathroom, this whole system is going to depend on sand. Well, at least for now. I'm looking forward to hearing everything you have to say in the comments below. I hope you had a great time with this episode, and I'll talk to you soon.